This time tomorrow night, we'll be assessing who won and who lost in the first leaders' debate of the campaign. Tonight, we set the table. In a moment, At Issue and the insiders. But first, a little background. All right, everyone knows that all debates are measured against this 1984 moment.
You had an option, sir. You could have done better.
Leading in the polls, John Turner led with his jaw on that one. His decision to load up an appointments list with Liberal hacks and flacks just before he called the election. Brian Mulroney couldn't believe his good fortune and wound up and pasted Turner.
I've gone so far because I believe what you did was so bad. I've gone so far, sir, to apologize for even kidding about it. I've apologized to the Canadian people for kidding about it. The least you should do is to apologize for having made these horrible appointments.
I've told you and told the Canadian people, Mr. Mulroney, that I had no option.
Well,
Truman, your next question,
you
please.
had an option, sir. You could have said, I am not going to do it. This is wrong for Canada, and I am not going to ask Canadians to pay the price. You had an option, sir, to say no, and you chose to say yes to the old attitudes and the old stories of the Liberal Party. That, sir, if I may say respectfully, that is not good enough for Canadians.
I had no option. I was able
that
to
is an avowal of failure. That is a confession of non-leadership, and this country needs leadership. You had an option, sir. You could have done better.
The classic debate knockout punch. Turner looked stunned and never recovered. Mulroney won more than 50% of the vote the last time that's happened and wound up with one of the largest majorities in Canadian history. But those moments are rare in the near half-century of Canadian campaign debates.
The national debate, live.
68 was the first one, and it was tame and polite. Different formats have been tried over the years. Group debates at podiums, one-on-ones, everyone at a single table, one questioner, many questioners. Some have been boring. Few have had big moments.
Programs normally seen at this time have been canceled.
88 had a reversal of fortune for John Turner. His campaign up to the debate had been so bad some of his own backroomers plotted to dump him just weeks before the vote. But then, in the debate,
why did you remove any ability to control the Canadian ownership of our business?
Turner clocked Mulroney on the issue of free trade.
I think the issues happen to be so important for the future of Canada. I happen to believe that you've sold us out. I happen to believe that once you...
Mr. Turner, just 1 second.
Once any
you
nation,
do not have a monopoly on patriotism. And I resent the fact that your implication that only you are a Canadian. I want to tell you that I come from a Canadian family and I love Canada. And that's why I did it, to promote prosperity. And don't you impugn my motives.
Economic levers.
Once a country yields its investments.
Once a country yields its energy.
We have not done it.
Once a country yields its agriculture.
Wrong again.
Once a country opens itself up to a subsidy war with the United States on terms of definition, then the political ability of this country to sustain the influence of the United States, to remain as an independent nation, that is lost forever.
Those few seconds saved Turner from a humiliating defeat in 1988. The Liberals still lost, but they doubled their seat total and put Mulroney on the defensive for the first time. Sometimes a debate can have a sleeper moment, one the analysts might miss, but the voters take note. In the last campaign, it was this back and forth between Michael Ignatieff and Jack Layton that may have ended one leader's hopes and energized another's.
You said before you have to walk the walk and you have to be a strong leader and respect Parliament. I've got to ask you then, why do you have the worst attendance record in the House of Commons of any member of Parliament? If you want to be Prime Minister, you better learn how to be a member of Parliament first. You know, most Canadians, if they don't show up for work, they don't get a promotion.
Mr. Layton, I don't surrender to anybody in my respect for the institution of Parliament and my obligation to the people who put me there. So don't give me lessons about respect for democracy.
Well,
don't give me lessons.
Where were you when I was there
standing
up to Mr. Harper and voting against his policies, and you weren't in the chamber? You missed 70% of the votes. I think you need to understand a little bit more about how our democracy works. That's my only point.
Ignatieff went on to a disastrous campaign and resigned within moments of the final vote count. Layton went on to win more than double the seats of any of his predecessors, and in doing so became leader of the opposition. Which brings us to tonight, on the eve of a very different debate schedule for the 2015 campaign. After all, it's just the first of many different formats. Will that make a difference? Will it create more turning point moments? And will the end result be helpful to Canadians trying to make a choice? All right, Chantal and Bruce are both here in Toronto tonight. Andrew will be joining us tomorrow. I want to start by showing you another clip, this one from yesterday. Corey tonight, the Conservative Party spokesman, talking about Justin Trudeau and about tomorrow night's debate. Watch this.
If he comes on stage with his pants on, he'll probably exceed expectations.
All right, some people saw that as offensive, some saw it as funny, a lot of people saw it as stupid. Nevertheless, it does raise the issue, no matter how you feel, about expectations, and that's what I want to talk about. Expectations for tomorrow. Stephen Harper. Bruce.
Well, I think that all of these leaders know that the people who are going to be watching this are a mix of the most partisan and the most curious among them. And I think when it comes to Mr. Harper, he's really got a hard choice. On the one hand, he does like to rally his base, but he also knows that the curious, the people who aren't really decided, they don't like to see him do that, and that they're actually interested in hearing him talk about his economic policy. I think, when I think about Mr. Harper, I think that's really where his opportunity is. Because I think what we know from research is that when people look at his economic policy, the idea that he stimulated the economy, that he went on eventually to balance or nearly balance the budget, that he lowered taxes, there are a lot of middle-of-the-road voters who think that that's reasonable economic policy. So he needs to give them a chance to hear that argument rather than just partisan bluster.
All right, expectations on Tom Mulcair, Chantal.
Oh, Thomas Mulcair is very good at going after Stephen Harper, and he's done it in the House of Commons, and he's been very efficient. Now he needs to be really efficient at convincing Canadians that he is a choice for Prime Minister to make all these voters, and the majority of voters are actually liable to look at all options. Many of them are looking for a non-conservative option. He has to make them more comfortable with going with the NDP. And that is not to say that if Mr. Mulcair, like Mr. Harper, has a chance to do to Justin Trudeau what Jack Layton did to Michael Ignatieff, that either of them would not seize the opportunity.
What about Justin Trudeau? I mean, I think most people agree that the expectations are lowest for him based on his last year or so. So going in, what do we look for there?
Well, there are a lot of expectations, obviously, from within the Liberal Party. The party's probably feeling of late that it's been left out of the conversation about who's going to win this election, and this is an opportunity to get back into that frame of reference. I think there are two imperatives for Mr. Trudeau. He needs to show that he can go into the corners with these other kind of brawling type politicians and come out with the puck. So toughness is something that he needs to demonstrate. He doesn't get a chance to do that in the House of Commons very much, doesn't do it on the hustings particularly, but this is an opportunity to do that. The second thing is that he needs to kind of insert himself into the narrative about what kind of economic policy Canada wants. If you don't like Stephen Harper's, you won't like what Thomas Mulcair would mean. He needs to criticize the NDP economic theories, and he needs to contrast the Liberal Party's theories or approaches to the economy with those.
Do you want to add on that, Chantal?
Well, when people echo what they hear in the attack ads, they're not worrying about whether Justin Trudeau can stand up and ask a question in the House of Commons. They actually worry about his command of issues. And he has to show a greater level of comfort with substance. Thomas Mulcair and Stephen Harper can take a complex issue, and whether you agree with what they do with it, they can, bring it down to 5 or 10 effective seconds. Justin Trudeau's not been really good at that. He has to show Canadians that he can do that he actually commands the policy side of things, because there are question marks there.
Elizabeth May is in the debate as well, so it's not just the three. She's been there before on the debate stage. What impact could she have tomorrow?
Well, she's usually a pretty effective communicator and somebody who's appealing to Canadians. Her style and her tone kind of fits the lens for most Canadians in terms of how partisan or not she is. And the subject matter, of course, is interesting to a lot of people. The challenge for Ms. May this time is that the most Green voters in Canada are probably looking at this election as one where they can't afford to vote for a party that has no chance of forming government, if they want to change a government that they think has been bad for the environment. So she needs to try to enlarge her share of voice, create a little bit more leverage for the Green Party as this election unfolds, and then figure out what her plea is to the voters as we get closer to Election Day.
All right. I want to show you two quick pictures in our continuing series of photo ops of the campaign now. We've been doing this for the last couple of months. This was yesterday in Laval, Quebec. Stephen Harper at a factory in that town, and nobody looks terribly happy standing around him, which you kind of wonder what the point was. And the other one was this one of Justin Trudeau yesterday, or a couple of days ago in Vancouver. You know, what can you say about that? I'm not sure how happy he was with that moment either, but nevertheless, that's what happened. What's the takeaway from these?
You can't fix the Justin Trudeau incident. That could have happened to any of the leaders. I'd be curious to see how Stephen Harper would have reacted, although he has more security to prevent those things from happening. For the Conservatives, who are clearly using the fact that they are running the Prime Minister, I think there's a message there that using people who are in their work days to be backgrounds will backfire. It wasn't just in Laval, it happened again in Toronto the next day. Not a good idea.
All right. You'll both be back tomorrow. Andrew will be finally coming off these well-deserved holidays and joining us too for our reaction to the debate.